Hi, it's James with Imagery Wedding Films. I have with me here the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I rented it this last weekend for a wedding that I had, and I really wanted to test this out because it's a newer camera. I've been seeing a lot of review videos online, but it's been more of, wildlife videography, or it's been, sit down interview type corporate shooting where, everyone has control over the environment, the lights, everything like that. And I really haven't seen this camera used in the field on a run and gun type scenario. So I wanted to see if this camera can really hold up to, the demands that we wedding videographers have to go through on that run and gun style shooting. So here is a few sample clips from the wedding so you can really see this camera in action on a wedding day, and then come on back and we'll talk about the pros and the cons of this camera and if I think that this would be a great camera for wedding videographers. So one of the first things to say about the pros of this camera is the image quality. I was blown away by the shots that I was getting with this and just how amazing everything looked. I've seen review videos online where they compare, side by side Pocket Cinema Camera with Arri Alexa, and you can't tell the difference. And the fact that this camera is as tiny as it is, as cheap as it is, the fact that it can stand its ground next to those bigger cameras is just super impressive, and I was really blown away with the imagery I was getting out of this camera. Another pro to this camera is the price. It comes in at $1,295, which is very affordable for anybody who doesn't have the money for an Arri Alexa or a Red or even a C200 or EVO 1, but still wants to be able to shoot amazing cinema quality footage in a cinema camera. So price is definitely really affordable and definitely a pro. So another pro of this is the menu system. I've never used a Blackmagic camera before, so this is the first time I've ever experienced the menu system. And it is super easy to navigate. Anything that you need is just within a few taps and you're there. The touch screen is very responsive. So I was just really impressed. It's not like Sony or even Panasonic, where you have to really dig through the menus. You got to scroll through everything to try to find what you're looking for. Everything is just laid out really easy in this menu system. So I was really impressed with that from Blackmagic. Another pro is just the key features that they have in this for wedding filmmakers. I've never used false color before, which this camera has, and it was amazing. For those of you who don't know what false colors is, basically it's the IRE scale of exposure. So you're able to see what parts of your image are overexposed, properly exposed, or underexposed. So shooting on the beach was great for me to be able to really dial in the exposure on the bride and groom, make sure that they're, properly exposed, that the sky isn't, completely overexposed, or that parts of the shadows aren't underexposed. So it was really cool to be able to have that. And the way I had it set up was that the IRE scale and false colors was on the bottom here on the Blackmagic, and then I had the graded LUT version of the image on my small HD. So I was able to make sure on the camera that the focus was dialed in, or that the exposure was dialed in, and then on my focus make sure that everything looked good on the image. So that was really cool. They also have a high frame rate button, so I shoot a lot in 60 frames per second so I can slow certain moments down for slow motion. And literally if I wanted to go between 60 frames and 24 frames, you just push a button. Push the high frame rate button, you're in 24 frames per second. push it again, you're in 60 frames per second. So it was super easy to toggle back and forth, which I liked. Another huge pro for me with this camera was that they made it micro four thirds sensors. So I already use micro four thirds sensors with the GH5. I can use all of the lenses I already have with this camera. So it's not like I needed to rent this camera or buy this camera and then also buy EF mount lenses or rent EF mount lenses and spend more money. So at least for me and for many Panasonic GH5 users, this is going to be really cool that you can just already use the lenses and the glass that you have and just kind of mount it right on here with no issues. Another thing that I really liked about this camera was it's very lightweight. It feels plasticky and it might feel a little bit cheap, but it's not. It's very durable. It's very hard plastic, I think they make it with. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But I don't know. It's super lightweight, which is good. I mean, I don't recommend going handheld with this because it doesn't have IBIS. We'll get to that in a minute. But for reception, you know, everyone was dancing, having a good time, jumping up and down. So I did go handheld with this because it fit that style. And it was just easy to hold it. You know, it wasn't heavy. My arms didn't get tired. It just feels really good in the hand, very lightweight. So yeah, that was a plus for me. The last pro that I will say about this camera is that it's great at high ISOs. Here's some footage that I shot at 64 ISO of just some reception dancing, and you can see that there is no noise in the image. This was not graded. There was no neat video put on this, nothing. This is just straight out of camera, and at 6400 ISO, there's no noise, which I thought was awesome. Coming from the GH5, I get up to 3200 ISO, and it is incredibly noisy. So to be able to take this camera and go up to 64 ISO and not even introduce any of that noise, that was just a huge pro for me. All right, so those are the pros. Let's just jump right into the cons. The battery life on this camera is awful. They say that the battery life is about 30 to 45 minutes. I found it to be closer to 30. One of the things that they also said about this camera, and I didn't experience this, but once the battery life gets to about 20%, the camera can shut off at any minute. So if you're in the middle of filming the bride getting in her dress, and you're under 20% and the camera shuts off, you just lost that clip and probably corrupted your card. So I noticed that I was paying more attention to the battery life. Where is it? Am I at 20%? Change out batteries. And that mentally took me out of the moment. You know, it took me out of paying attention to what's happening, where I should be, what I should be shooting, because I was more concerned about the battery life. So that was a con for me. If you do get this camera, I definitely recommend either looking into a battery pack for the bottom of the camera that I think might give you about 3 hours worth of footage or 3 hours worth of runtime, or just getting 6 to 8 batteries that you can just rotate in and out when you need. So I touched on this a little bit before, but this camera does not have IBIS. Coming from the GH5, IBIS is huge. IBIS has allowed me to not have a monopod, to go handheld pretty much the entire day and get really, smooth, clean shots. Whereas with this, you can't go handheld. If the bride's getting her makeup done and you're trying to, get in tight on her lips, you're gonna see every little shake and jitter. And I'm sure, warp stabilization or final cut stabilization, I'm sure one of those can kind of even out the shots, but you're taking the risk because I know that they aren't perfect and there's a lot of times that they can't correct a shot. So you are taking a huge risk going handheld, which means you do have to bring out some sort of stabilization. Again, it's not a big issue. People who shoot with Canon, people who shoot on the 1DX Mark II, I mean, those cameras, the Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, they don't have stabilization as it is. So using a non-stabilized camera like this isn't a big deal. But for people who rely heavily on that, who use GH5, that is going to be something that kind of can hinder you on a wedding day. So speaking of stabilization, this does not mount on my Ronin S. It is just too long. So there is actually an extender you need to buy that mounts into the Ronin S. The arm comes out a little bit and then you can mount this camera onto that so it fits onto the Ronin S. So that's something that really annoyed me. I wanted to take this out on my Ronin S and try it out, and it just wouldn't fit. So that's just something that you need to know ahead of time, and just check to make sure whatever gimbal you're using, that this camera can fit on that gimbal. Another thing that I didn't like about this camera was that the screen does not move. Looks like it can, but it doesn't. So, you know, I have the monitor up here, which was great. I was able to kind of rotate it for whatever angle I was shooting at, but I wish it had an articulating screen or something. You know, if you're shooting low or you're shooting high, you know, unless you have an external monitor, you know, that kind of is something that was annoying. Another con is that this chews up a lot of space. So I put in 128 gig CFast 2.0 card, shot in UHD at ProRes 422, and it said that at 60 frames per second, I was only going to be getting 21 minutes of record time. Being there for 7 hours, that was something that was very problematic. Even going to 24 frames per second, I only got 52 minutes of record time. So this was something where I had to really go down to HD, so that way I can get at least 1.5 hours to 2 hours per card. Again, I didn't really want to shoot in HD. That's not what this camera is meant for. People who are shooting and buying this camera, they're looking for 4K RAW, and you're really going to need to spend some money on some CFast cards or an SSD drive to really give you that. So you're just, you know, spending more money. But just know ahead of time that whatever you do shoot, if you are shooting UHD or 4K, it is going to chew up a lot of space. So I know that I said Pro was the price, but I think a con is also that it is very affordable, because, you know, you do have to spend a lot of money to accessorize it and to rig it up, get a cage for it so that you can get a monitor, you can get a mic on here, you know, your SSD drives, or, you know, spending money to get your CFast cards, or spending your money to get a battery pack or numerous batteries. All in all, I mean, I can see you spending, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 to rig this up and get it to be user friendly for a wedding day. So even though you are spending $1,300 for this camera, you are going to need to be spending at least $1,000 to $2,000 additional to really get this to be user friendly for us wedding videographers. So I think that is a con, because not a lot of people know that until they get the camera and realize you're going to have to sink all this extra money in to get it to where it needs to be for them to take it out on a wedding day. Another thing that I don't like about this camera is that it doesn't have a viewfinder. On the GH5, I've been so accustomed to being outside and just holding this up to my eye and being able to look through the viewfinder on bright days and really kind of see what I'm shooting. The small HD focus, there are times where I'll be outside and it's bright and I can't see it. Other times I can, it's not bad, but there are times that I couldn't see on the HD focus, and I also couldn't see on the back. This back monitor here gets very bright and just really blocks out a lot of the image. So I really wish that this had a viewfinder that I'd be able to look through, just to kind of see what I was shooting out on the bright, you know, Florida beaches. So that was kind of a con for me. Another con, so right down here they have the fan for the camera. And it sits kind of right by the metal mount here for the thread. And you know, like when you're shooting, your hand kind of rests there, so you can kind of grip it and kind of go handheld with it. So if you are going handheld with it, just be aware that this gets very hot. There were times that I was probably shooting for about 20 minutes of just having the camera on, end of the night, shooting dance footage. And my wrist and my hand I had to put this down because it was just getting too hot. Just having that rest on your hand, and you're focusing and you're getting what you need, and that's just blowing out hot air, and it just warms up really fast. So that was a con for me. I wasn't a fan of that at all. And that really it got to the point where I just had to put this down and then start shooting a little bit of my GH5 to let this thing cool down before I could pick it up and use it again. All right, so there you have it. There are the pros and the cons. Final thoughts. There were a lot of cons to this camera, I'm not gonna lie, but the image quality that you get from this camera, in my opinion, kind of pushes those cons aside. Would I buy this and take this out in the field for my next wedding? Probably not. I think that this is a great corporate camera. I think if you're filming sit-down interviews, if you're filming studio work, if you're filming, kind of shoots that you have full control over, lighting and everything like that, I would definitely buy this camera and say you're gonna really love this camera and be able to do a lot with it. But run and gun style shooting, wedding day, kind of bride prep, you know, get up and go, things happen, you need to really prepare for it. I don't think this camera is great for that. I just don't think that this camera can really compete with the GH5 in terms of IBIS, going handheld, kind of on the fly shooting. But you know, I mean, it is all personal preference. I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in this camera, renting it for a wedding, going out and shooting with it, and just making sure you have your SSD drive, or you have your CFast cards, you have enough batteries. Go out there and try it for yourself. See if this is something that you like. There are a ton of pros to this camera, and a lot of the cons are easily fixable. So I don't think they're anything where, if it is a con, it's not something that you just need to throw the camera away. You can fix it, you can work around it, make it work for you. But I definitely enjoy this camera. I loved having it, but in my opinion, I don't think that this is a camera for wedding filmmakers. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hit the subscribe button. In the coming weeks, we will be releasing a bunch more videos. A bunch of educational videos about wedding videography, going into my bag, showing what I use, explaining why I use it. You know, we get asked all the time how to build a business, how to go from part-time to full-time, how to network, how to book brides. So we're going to be doing a lot of these videos, kind of helping young filmmakers kind of make a living at being a wedding filmmaker, and doing more gear reviews like this, more camera reviews, more gimbal reviews, more light reviews. Really just kind of helping you guys pick the best gear to get the job done on a wedding day. So again, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next video.